I know you all have been subconsciously clamoring for another reading update since I haven't done one in 2.5 weeks. So you're like, Vince, what are you doing? Where are the reading updates? I thought I would go through and capture the missing time, the books that I have read since whatever my last weekly reading update was. And there has actually been a lot of reading going on. The books haven't been too long, so that's why there's a lot of them. But it's been a decent month. I'm just looking at my reading journal right here. And no, I have not forgotten the Traumatic Book Club. I need to reread Notes from Underground still. I've been attending to other matters in my reading life, so I'm going to do that soon and then put out the video for the book club very soon, hopefully. But let's see, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 books to talk about. So I'll try to be quick. First thing, I finished A History of Reading, which I was in the middle of during the last update. A History of Reading is, I have it right here. It's by Alberto Manguel, Argentine-born Canadian literary critic, bookman, just guy who's famous for reading and writing about reading. And this is a quasi-history, quasi-literary essay book. It goes over many aspects of, well, reading, but in conjunction with reading, you have to talk about writing and words and books and what came before books. So we start, well, the structure of this book, it's not exactly like a history book. Manguel, he's a subtly erudite writer, where a lot of erudite people shove it down your throats. Manguel, you can just tell without him having the need to wow you with diction or fancy tricks or anything. You can just tell, and it's an understated vibe, but he really gives off well-read. But in addition to the history where he talks about like ancient Mesopotamia and the invention of writing and the alphabet, and there's a lot of focus on St. Augustine and his confessional writing and how that led to more medieval tomes being written, and then we go into the monks of the medieval age and their use of the codex and transcribing documents and creating bound books and so on and so forth in the actual history of reading. But he also talks about the aspects of reading in reading aloud and picture books and how we learn to read. I found the more general commentary on reading to be more interesting than the history parts. I feel like I would be better off with the historian doing the actual history of reading. That's why it's called A History of Reading, though. None of this is definitive, but a good read if you like books and reading and you want to find some enthusiasm for the craft of reading, where you're thinking about reading. Less so the turn your brain off kind of reading, but the enthusiasm for that deep sense of reading. So, Alberto Manguel, I finished that, I liked it. What do we got next? Next, I finished Quixote by Ilan Stavans. This is a nonfiction work, semi-critical, semi-history of the novel, semi-biography of Miguel de Cervantes. And it's an average book, I think. It did its job. I learned about the time period in which Cervantes was writing. I learned about any like influences that Cervantes had and his legacy, or the legacy of the novel, and how it has influenced the world and Hispanic culture at large, which it has done a lot. But the in the end, I don't think it really made an impact on me, other than just learning some of those fun tidbits about the novel. But I did get I did gain some inspiration into wanting to read the Edith Grossman translation as soon as possible. Or maybe that's a little hasty, but I'm even more enthused than I was. I've only read the John Rutherford Penguin Classics translation so far. So I want to get to Grossman. I have the paperback. I hauled it at the Brattle in April. Really floppy, so I want to get to that. Let's see. After Quixote, I finished The Monk by Matthew Lewis. This is a 1796 Gothic horror novel about a pious monk descending into the sins of pride and lust. And it's set in a prior Spain, in Madrid, like prior to 1796. And we follow the lives of a couple noble, rich people in this city who slowly come into the circle of this monk, Ambrosio, and his wicked and depraved ways. And I mentioned this book in my top 10 books of 2026 so far, my last video. I didn't really like the writing style. You can see more of my thoughts there, but once I finished the book and everything came together and I could think about it as a complete novel, I really liked it. And I think now, knowing the full story, I can come back to it later and probably enjoy the writing style a little more the second time. But you never know until you try it again. So reread books. See, next I finished Unutterable Horror, A History of Supernatural Fiction, Volume 1 by S.T. Joshi. You might know S.T. Joshi if you're a fan of H.P. Lovecraft. He's one of the premier, if not the pinnacle of Lovecraft criticism, as well as other weird authors. Weird in this sense, weird literature being like, I believe Lovecraft described it as that which is not possible. So that could be sci-fi, fantasy, supernatural. I think would fall into weird. Well, sci-fi could be possible. But like fantasy and supernatural basically would be weird. But this is just supernatural fiction. Supernatural being... I know Joshi has a definition here that I could find at some point, but it basically means you're in the natural world and something happens that goes beyond natural. Like it couldn't happen. But it's not a fantasy where the world is based in that which is not possible. And Volume 1 goes from the Epic of Gilgamesh to the end of the 19th century. We end with like Ambrose Bierce and Robert W. Chambers and Henry James to an extent. There's so many writers that you don't just like end on one. Like at the end of the 19th century, so many supernatural writers are going at the same time. But this is a really impressive book. I don't think it's the greatest as a book itself. Like me reading it, I mean, here's the thing. Joshi is acting here not only as a historian, but as a critic, and he has a very rigid viewpoint of what the supernatural aesthetic is, and anything that doesn't fall into his strict categories or his strict guidelines for this aesthetic, he deems to be bad. And for that reason, he trashes a lot of books that don't are good outside of his aesthetic. Like some of these are just good books that Joshi just trashes because of their what he calls their failure to adopt the aesthetic or something. But like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Picture of Dorian Gray, Dracula, Joseph Sheridan Le Fanu, which I might agree with, but he lambasts all of those, a lot of like famous classics, and I've read the first three and I think they're great. I've never read them from I've never read them with the viewpoint of, oh, I'm going to look out for the supernatural themes and happenings behind, like within this book, and judge it via that. I was just reading those books as a reader. So I think I had different thoughts based on that than Joshi did as a well-regarded critic of the supernatural and the weird. But yeah, if you are interested in early horror, I am interested in early horror. That's why I got the book. I wanted to read about the Gothics and the Victorians and the fin de siecle horror writers. Joshi does cover like pretty much everything that I could think of. Oh, Edgar Allan Poe, of course, the Americans, Nathaniel Hawthorne. In the Victorians, you have, Dickens had some supernatural. The Brontes had some quasi-supernatural. So did Wilkie Collins. The Gothics, you have Horace Walpole, Anne Radcliffe, Matthew Lewis, William Beckford. He covers all of these. There is a bit of reliance on plot summary, which, you're going to get that. I would have wished for more impersonal criticism. All criticism is pretty much personal, though, because the critic is the one criticizing, but more disinterested criticism, I think, I would have appreciated, and a little less plot summarizing. But yeah, this is from Hippocampus Press. I do want to get volume 2 eventually, but I'm still working my way through a lot of books that are in here that I want to read before I know there's going to be a lot of plot summaries in volume 2 as well. That'll cover the 20th century, so I want to hold that off for a little bit because I'll need to buy it and everything. Yeah, cool picture in the front. And what's next? Next, I finished The King of Elfland's Daughter by Lord Dunsany. Really cool mass market paperback here with, I don't want to break it, but front to back illustrations. I'm not sure who's that. I don't think it says who it's from. Definitely not. But this is a fantasy novel by Lord Dunsany from 1924. And it is a proto-mythical adventure story. It deals with the relations between those of Earth. This didn't really feel like a real Earth, though. To me, it felt like an age of Earth that has since gone past and sunk from our memory. So the relations of that Earth and the town of Earl, E-R-L, and that of this fairy realm called Elfland, in which there is a divide between Earth and Elfland, or Earl and Elfland, and you can't really see it, but some people can pass through. And in Elfland, there is the king, uh, the Elf King, and his daughter, Lyrazel. And the Elf King lives in a basically timeless, perfect, utopian uh, fantasy world. And it's full of creatures and peace and calm. And then Earl is more just like a medieval village, kind of. But it's not really based in medieval Europe. It's just an old village, and the the plot starts when the son of the king of Earl, Alveric, journeys into Elfland and secrets away the daughter of the king and marries her back on Earth. And the Elf King is pissed. He's like, I gotta get my daughter back. And there's a whole like back and forth, and then Alveric and Lyrazel have a kid, and the kid is magic. Or he's not magic. It's unknown if he will have magic powers or not. And I probably did a terrible plot summary there, but this, I thought I would really love it. The prose was good, but there was nothing that compelled me here. There was nothing that compelled me to keep moving the pages. And I usually don't put books down once I've started reading them, at least for a while. This book, I wanted to put it down like every page. And it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. There was just something about it that it made me want to stop. So I rated it averagely. I don't think it was bad, but yeah. Disappointing. I thought this would be a really really big high point for me. The King of Elfland's Daughter by Lord Dunsany. It's a pause for something I'm currently reading. It's a graphic novel, a collection. We have The Amazing Spider-Man, the Penguin Classics Spider-Man. This was written by Stan Lee and illustrated by Steve Ditko. This collects 12 of the earliest Spider-Man comics that came from Marvel in the 1960s. These are the first 2 years from 1962 to 64. Of course, it features Amazing Fantasy 15, or was it 25? Amazing Fantasy number 15, where the character of Spider-Man is introduced and his origin story with the spider bite and Uncle Ben getting killed by the robber is basically the whole story. And then Spider-Man gets his own comic, and we get in here Amazing Spider-Man 1 through 4, 9, 10, 13, 14, and 17 through 19. And the ones that are skipped get small plot summaries, and they're talked about in between. But yeah, there's a nice introduction to the series and a nice introduction to this volume. And I've really been enjoying seeing the early parts of Spider-Man. I had read a few before, a few early issues. But here, it's really interesting to view Spider-Man or Peter Parker as the first teenage superhero who has teenage problems. And while the writing is corny and the illustrations are fine, I think the issues or the themes that are being dealt with here are actually really interesting for early 1960s comics. Peter having to understand his responsibility as a superhero, of course, there's the famous quote, but also as a nephew to Aunt May, who's sick and poor, and as a citizen of New York, and as a kid who has to go to school, and a kid who is trying and is kind of failing in his romantic adventures. It's actually more impactful, I think, than I had imagined when I picked it up. But yeah, overall, the stories are fine. You get a lot of the cool villains introduced in these initial pages. You got Dr. Octopus, Electro, the Green Goblin, the Sandman. Who else? Gosh, I'm definitely missing somebody. I think. Well, you got J. Jonah Jameson too. He's funny. But there's some cameos from the Fantastic Four and the Hulk as well. So really interesting stuff. I love reading graphic novels and comics. So yeah, the Penguin Classic. Two audiobooks that I did in June. First, from Edgar Allan Poe, The Murders in the Rue Morgue and Other Stories. I don't have this up in front of me, so I might be wrong. There were 6 stories here. Murders in the Rue Morgue and The Purloined Letter, which are both C. Auguste Dupin detective stories, which are kind of like the first detective stories ever. Let's see. Purloined Letter, then the final story, probably my favorite. That was one of the ones I hadn't read before. The Mask of the Red Death. Amazing. The Raven was there. Great poem. I've read that a few times at least. Then we had the Descent into the Maelstrom. I had read that before. It was a little more dull than I remembered. Not that it was a dull story. It's about a guy telling a tale about how he had been shipwrecked by a giant whirlpool, basically. And then there's also the 1002nd Tale of Scheherazade, which I haven't read the Arabian Nights, but I really thought that one was boring. And I just couldn't get into that one. I listened to this on a long drive. I was on vacation. So that was fun to revisit some Poe stories that I had read a few years ago, and a couple that were new to me. But I really like the small sample I've had from Poe, and I need to read him in full. Another audiobook that I listened to this past week is something I read last year in September. It's The Word for World is Forest by Ursula K. Le Guin. This is a 1972, early to mid-70s novel written kind of in reaction to the Vietnam War. But it's anti-colonialism, or like a ecological science fiction novel. And basically, the book is about there's a planet. There's a planet. This is within the Hainish cycle of Le Guin. So the people of Earth, the Terrans, have traveled to this planet to make way for new life, new human life, new Earth human life on this planet. There's already a species of meter-tall, green, furry humanoids living in this forest planet. It's mostly water, and then there's forests. And the humans have come in, they're logging the whole thing, and they've invited the Athshayans, the host species, to voluntarily work in their camps, which is, it's basically slavery, and they beat and rape the Earth humans beat and rape the Athshayans, and this all broils over into a kind of a revolution and a war between the Earth humans and the Athshayan humans. And of course the military outposts on this planet, the chief antagonist, Don Davidson, is one of the evilest characters I've ever read. And it's this book is all about one, xenophobia and racism and sexism and anti-war and all that, but it's also about this species of non-violence, like making a move towards a watershed moment, and like how far is too far for breaking your morals. And I found I really loved this book on the listen. I had some hesitations the first time when I had read it through, but a lot of times when I read something for the first time, I'm only thinking about, or I'm mostly concerned with what is going to happen, how is it happening, and what's going to happen. So it's harder to slow down and appreciate the simple things, the subtle things that are happening. And this second time when I was listening to it, I already knew what happened. So it was a lot easier to reflect on what was going on. And I really think it's a great book. I've read a few Le Guin's, but this is the only sci-fi novel of hers that I've read so far. But it's really good. And the final thing, I finished this today. That is The Gods of Pegana by Lord Dunsany, who did King of Elfland's Daughter. It is a fictional, mythological pantheon slash theogony, where Dunsany creates this this cosmic universe full of gods, and they create the earth, and there's one chief god, which, Manayod Sushai, and it creates all the small gods who are like time and death and life and the sea and destiny and dreams and mirth. And all these small gods and the home gods, which are even lesser gods, they play on Earth with the humans that they've created. And it was everything that I thought King of Elfland's Daughter would be, but not in a novel form. It is mostly little mythological vignettes, comparable to kind of the Greco-Roman myths mixed with Genesis of the Bible. But I'm going to stop talking about this book. I loved it. I'm going to refer you to the review I wrote on Goodreads, because I think that captures a lot of the spirit of the book. And as soon as I finished the book, I just started writing. And it's not a great review in the review writing sense, but how I felt about the book really bled through there. So check out that review if you want to see more about what I had to say. But yeah, that was a lot, actually. I wasn't expecting to talk about so many things, actually. It seemed smaller, but I did read a lot these past few weeks. And yeah, thank you for listening. I wonder if you have read any of these. Most of them aren't very popular. But yeah, let me know your thoughts if you have, or if you're interested in these. Yeah. Thank you for watching, and talk to you later.